How often do we truly see the people around us? The silent struggles hidden beneath the hurried footsteps, the averted gazes in a crowded city. We rush from point A to point B, headphones in, lost in our own worlds, oblivious to the small dramas unfolding around us. The morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling city streets, reflecting off the glass windows of the number 27 bus as it lumbered along its usual route. It was a Tuesday, a day like any other, filled with the cacophony of rush hour, car horns, distant sirens, the rhythmic rumble of the bus engine. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of coffee and the murmur of conversations. Mr. Thomas, a veteran bus driver with kind eyes and a gentle smile, navigated the familiar streets with practiced ease. He was a fixture on this route, known for his quiet attentiveness and his knack for remembering his regular passengers' names. He'd always considered it more than just a job. It was a way to connect with his community, even in these small, fleeting moments. Just ahead, at a small, almost invisible bus stop, sat a figure huddled on the bench. It was a girl, no older than 10, her slight frame almost swallowed by a worn, oversized jacket. Her dark hair, usually neatly braided, was disheveled, strands clinging to her tear-streaked face. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. She clutched a crumpled tissue in her hand, her knuckles white with the force of her grip. One small, pink backpack lay discarded beside her, its contents spilling slightly, a brightly colored lunchbox, a well-loved teddy bear peeking out. Her internal monologue, though silent to the outside world, was a torrent of emotions. They laughed. They always laugh. The taunts from earlier that day echoed in her head, sharp and cruel. Freak. Weirdo. Nobody likes you. A fresh wave of tears welled up, blurring her vision. She felt a knot of shame and loneliness tightening in her chest. It felt like the world was a kaleidoscope of blurry colors and muffled sounds, and she was utterly alone in the center of it. A brief flashback flickered through her mind. The school hallway, the jeering faces, the shove that sent her sprawling, her books scattering across the floor. The sting of humiliation burned as fiercely as the scrape on her knee. It wasn't the first time, and the fear that it wouldn't be the last gnawed at her. She just wanted to disappear, to be invisible. Mr. Thomas's eyes, trained to scan the road ahead, caught the small figure at the bus stop. He saw the slumped posture, the trembling shoulders, a subtle shift in his driving, a slight easing of the accelerator, a glance in the rearview mirror. His usual cheerful greeting to passengers faded as a knot of concern tightened in his stomach. What's wrong with that little girl? The question, unbidden, surfaced in his mind. Should I stop? I'm already a few minutes behind schedule. A quick internal debate ensued. He knew the route, the timetable, the pressure to keep things moving. But the image of the girl, so clearly distressed, wouldn't leave him. He'd seen enough in his years of driving to recognize the signs of a child in trouble. He made a decision. With a decisive flick of the indicator, he pulled the bus over to the curb, the air brakes hissing a soft sigh. He put the bus in park, the engine idling with a low rumble. He opened the door, the familiar whoosh of the hydraulics sounding unusually loud in the sudden quiet. He stepped down onto the pavement, his movements slow and deliberate, careful not to startle her. As he approached, he spoke softly, his voice a calming rumble. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you all right?" He crouched down, his gaze level with hers, his expression filled with genuine concern. He offered a small, tentative smile, a hand outstretched, not touching, but offering a gesture of support. The girl looked up, startled, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. She shrank back slightly, clutching the tissue tighter. I, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Take your time," Mr. Thomas said gently. "There's no rush. What's happened?" She hesitated, then, in a rush of words, the story spilled out. The bullying, the taunts, the feeling of being utterly alone. Her voice cracked with emotion, the words punctuated by sobs. Mr. Thomas listened patiently, his face etched with empathy. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. He simply listened, letting her know that she was heard, that her pain was valid. "That sounds really tough," he said finally, his voice filled with warmth. "It's not okay for anyone to treat you that way. You don't deserve that." He paused, then added, "You're not alone, you know. There are people who care about you." He didn't tell her to just ignore them or be strong. He simply offered her a space to be vulnerable, to feel her feelings without judgment. He offered her a tissue from his pocket, a small, practical gesture that spoke volumes. Around them, the city continued its relentless hum. Cars whizzed by, their drivers oblivious to the small drama unfolding on the sidewalk. A dog barked in the distance. The wind rustled the leaves of a nearby tree. But in that small space between the bus driver and the girl, a connection was formed, a moment of shared humanity. The silence between their words was filled with a quiet understanding. The girl's tears slowed, her breathing becoming more regular. She looked at Mr. Thomas, a flicker of hope in her eyes. The initial reaction of the passengers was mixed. A few sighs, a shuffling of feet, a glance at a watch. But as they observed the scene unfolding outside, a hush fell over the bus. The murmurs of conversation died down. A young mother, holding a toddler on her lap, caught the eye of an elderly gentleman across the aisle. They exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the situation. No word were needed. The shared understanding, the empathy was palpable. The impatience faded, replaced by a collective sense of compassion. After a few more minutes, the girl sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Thank you," she said, her voice still shaky, but stronger. She offered a small, hesitant smile, a glimmer of light returning to her face. A hug, brief but heartfelt, followed. Mr. Thomas smiled back, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "You take care of yourself, okay?" He stood up, dusting off his trousers. "And remember, you're not alone." He returned to the bus, a mix of emotions swirling within him. He felt a sense of satisfaction at having helped, but also a lingering sadness for the girl's pain. He started the engine, the bus groaning back to life. As the bus pulled away, the girl felt a shift within her. The knot in her chest had loosened. The world still felt a little scary, but it didn't feel quite as overwhelming. She clutched her teddy bear a little tighter, a small reminder of the unexpected kindness she had encountered. She decided, in that moment, that she would tell her mom what had happened. She wouldn't keep it bottled up inside anymore. Mr. Thomas continued his route, his mind replaying the encounter. He thought about the girl, about the countless other struggles people faced every day, often unseen. He felt a renewed sense of purpose in his work, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could make a difference. He made a silent vow to be even more observant, more present, more attuned to the needs of those around him. The atmosphere on the bus had subtly changed. The air felt lighter, the silence less heavy. A few passengers exchanged quiet glances, a shared understanding passing between them. The earlier impatience had dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of reflection. The number 27 bus continued its journey, carrying its passengers through the bustling city. But for one little girl, and for one kind bus driver, that ordinary Tuesday had become extraordinary. It was a reminder that in a world that often feels cold and indifferent, a single act of kindness can be a beacon of hope, a spark of connection in the vastness of human experience. Perhaps the next time we see someone struggling, someone lost in their own private sorrow, we will remember the bus driver and the little girl, and choose to step outside our own busy lives, to offer a moment of compassion, a listening ear, a simple act of human kindness. Because, in the end, it's those small connections that truly matter, the ripples of empathy that spread outward, touching lives in ways we may never fully comprehend.